Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Borderline Podcast with me, your host, Andrew Willox, and we're back doing podcasts. Thank the Lord. It's been a long summer, a long summer. So this one feels good to be back, and it feels good to be back doing solo podcasting. And the reason for that is that the Borderline Podcast celebrated its first year since we launched all the way back last September. So if you have been following from the first episode all the way up to now, firstly, I take my hat off to you. You've done damn well too. And secondly, obviously, thank you so much. It honestly means the world to me. I genuinely never expected this to go more than a couple of episodes. So to be here 52 episodes later and a year later, it's just, it's a little bit pinch me stuff. It's really, 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 really cool. And yeah, so we've learned a lot in the last year. This podcast has changed me as a person. It's shaped my life in a different direction. I've learned things about other people. I've learned a lot about myself. And I kind of want to come on, get back into solo podcasting, get back to how we started last September, and just talk about the last year, talk about how it's changed me a little bit and what it's done for me in regards to my mental health as well. Of course, we're going to talk about my mental health. That's why we're here. We're trying to go destigmatize these conversations and make them easier for other people to have. So, firstly, again, it's just so cool to be back doing this. I was really disappointed throughout the summer. I really kind of set myself again kind of too high expectations, especially with the shifts that I do. And I know a lot of people ever do continental shifts, but then you'll appreciate as well if you do that you get pretty damn tired if you don't sleep when you need to sleep. And I don't do night shift very well anymore. I really, really, really cannot sleep during the day. Like once I'm up still, that's it. So if I only got like an hour and a half, 2 hours sleep after a night shift, that was me. And yeah, it's not fun. And then obviously we had training for the Great North Run, which we went and done. You're not able to see it, but my medal's just behind me. So that was amazing. And to anybody else that done the Great North Run as well, superb. There's a lot of people that were related and euphoric after, and it's good to see. Definitely, hopefully, be back at it again next year. It certainly gave me a little bit of fire and a little belly to keep on running again. So let's keep at it this time. I really do mean that. So, jargon aside, let's crack on. So last September we've came a long way. We've got different live feeds on now. We're on YouTube. We're on different channels, and that it's beyond my first expectations. And I kind of got some little like talking points that I thought would help with cover. It sort of just helped me, go with the flow. If anybody didn't see my intro video, thank God I've not had to do it. I say I've not had to do an intro. This is Andrew take 9 across in the corner, and I've already done like 4 minutes of this before. This is totally different, a totally different direction I went with this episode, or this take, I should say. So we've came a long way from there, and like I say, when I first started, when I very first done the Borderline podcast, I was so let down. Like by the first episode, the social confirmation, I should say. And I was so let down by the sound quality and the video quality, but I was so wanting to get it out there and get it live and get it pushed out there because I knew the message meant so much to me anyway, and I knew it meant a lot to other people. And after obviously getting the better mics and that was still got them being really good, that kind of thing I did. But I look back now and there's just like, God, there was no direction. Like I was just wanting to just blur out how I felt to the world and how these these mental health issues affected me and how they affect me in my everyday to day life. And I kind of lost that narrative, I think, with the podcast, and I am a little bit let down. I'm a lot let down by myself. Sorry, that's a bit of a tongue twister for me. By myself in that regard is that I've kind of selfishly, I guess, I've kind of taken it away from me, and that's something that is really, really important for me to get back because by far I've got it just here. Like, what's been the best part of the podcast? That's an easy one. That's the easiest question. When it trumps all the great guests, all due respect, that I've had. And that's when people say to you, that was cool that you spoke about, even just the other week at work. Derek, if you're listening, thumbs up. we're just in this other conversation. He turned around and he says, that's right. You're on about that on your podcast with a gadgie. That's a terrible accent for this. And I was just like, it's moments like that, honestly. They're just the coolest little thing that, that somebody's actually listened to something that you've done and the conversation that you've had with somebody. And it's really cool when, I say that, when you get kind of messages and stuff like that, it's honestly, it's just really, really, really fucking cool feeling. And when I stopped doing solo podcasting, I felt like that connection was kind of lost. And don't get me wrong, I've got a ton of guests booked on. Don't worry, and it's not going to be all about me again. And so I really want to get that back, and I really want to kind of get back into our area, or in and around IMOF and whatnot, and try and not do my bit, but do my bit. I guess there's people out there that are silent and they feel that they need to be silent, and that's one thing that I've learned. All these people that have these conversations all have the same sort of narrative, and that's that they've felt that they've had to stay silent. And then, excuse me a second, I just need a drink of water. Yeah, they felt that they've needed to stay silent for so long, and then they talk about these things that have, they've haunted them for years and years and years. And my bit is just to try and not let that happen to people at a later state, is get out and get talking about it, because getting talking about it, my God, has it helped me. And I mean this point, and I do not expect anybody. In fact, please don't. You might have a better podcast than me. Don't you be going and getting yourself your own podcast and doing it like this. Just talk to somebody, yeah? Do whatever you please. Just talk. But no, talking about how I feel and trying to be incredibly honest as much as I can has been the biggest benefit to me, with the way that I feel and the way that I react to what goes on in my head now. Even, I would say, 6 months ago, everybody, if you listen to the podcast, I'm not going to go into it just now, but if you listen to the podcast earlier in the year, you know that a lot of shit on and stuff like that. And it was a terrible time. And I got incredibly stressed out, and I still wasn't dealing with my mental health very well then, as I am now. We'll get into ways on why that specifically changed. And it was weird back then. Like, I could almost feel it coming on, but when it came on, it was just like I was lost. I had no idea what to do with it. When I say that it's coming on, I feel like that depression. Like, I think people might be able to know what I'm on about with that one. Is that you kind of feel like I do the day just as kind of normal Andrew, although quite elevated mood, I must say. I'm quite a good chipper mood today for being a Monday too. Although I'm back on 8-hour shifts, so bonus, felt like a holiday. And so totally distracted as ever. And I don't know, just you feel different, and it's not that it's there yet. You just know that the worst is to come, and then it's on you. And it's suffocating you, and it's fixated. It's horrible. It's like this weight. And this is another helpful point in the last years, is being able to describe exactly how it feels. That's from writing. Yeah, and it feels like this horrible weight, and that emptiness, because that's the one thing that I've realized with depression. It's emptiness. It's not sadness. It's not this perpetuated sadness that I thought was coming on me. I'm going to feel sad for 2 weeks. I'm going to feel shit for 2 weeks. It's not even that you feel shit. It's you feel empty. You feel nothing. And that's what I recognize now. And it's so much of a handier tool to go, I know I'm in that state of mind. I know I need to do this. I know, oh no, restart or install Windows. Do not restart now. Snooze. Please don't go off. I cannot take another take. So distracting. And it's so much handier to recognize that now, and being able to establish that when I am going that way, I can do things now to keep me from, nosediving almost into the ground, and then being in that horrible displaced area for 2 weeks where you just feel empty and you just feel lost and you feel so drawn out and exhausted and confused with yourself. And I get it, but I feel that I can help you guys, or anybody listening, realize that that's actually normal. with this condition is okay. It's not normal to people that don't have this condition. That's like people with jaundice have yellow skin, and people without jaundice don't have yellow skin. Sorry to use physical attributes, but that's the thing with mental health is that I get it, and I get it's still so hard for people to talk about because there is the taboo that people don't think it exists, and culturally that's all over the world. Another point we've learned over the last year: mental health's bigger than just what happens in this household and just in this community. It is an epidemic worldwide. It's horrifying when you speak to a couple of guests, and I think I put in an Instagram post the other day that some people have had what we would explain as much harder upbringings than others, and that's sometimes easier than to depict that depression or that anxiety or that PTSD or that mental health condition that they're suffering from. You can think, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then you have other people that you think, wow, you were not so much privileged, but you had things going for you quite early on, and you had support, and you had that, and then something just changed. And it's a massive realization for me as well that I always knew that mental health was everywhere, and everybody could suffer in their own way. But actually seeing it and talking to people about it, it completely changes your dynamic. And that kind of goes into the main thing that I've learned about myself as well, and that's kind of the spiritual side of it, I guess, and being really at one with myself. I think people get really confused when people sometimes say spirituality. Sorry, I just need another drink. When they think possibly religion, possibly, I don't know, believing in the make-believe. It's not that for me. Spirituality for me has been completely honest and one with yourself. I'm not completely spiritual now because I'm not completely honest with myself at times. And that's just the way I am just now. Do I want to get there? Of course I want to get there. I want to get there to be a better person for me, because this is how I deal with things now. And it's so much healthier than how I dealt with things before. And that's being able to take myself out of an environment. Like I've always said, going to a bath. I love going into a bath. And asking myself them questions, because when was the last time that you really asked yourself, how are you doing? Like, honestly, just think about that for a second. Like, when was the last time that you asked yourself, how are you doing? And be completely honest with that answer, because it's okay to be honest with yourself. And that's the thing that I've realized as well. You have to be honest with yourself if you want to try and get through this. And when you can slow down your breathing and get into that relaxed state, get into that almost catatonic state, and really answer those questions yourself with your own thoughts and the own way that you're interacting. And when you are then giving yourself back the answers that are completely true to yourself, then that to me is spirituality. People can define it in each way they want to, but that to me is spirituality, and that is the best thing that I've learned for my own mental health this year. It's not been medicine, but that has helped. It's not been really much else apart from obviously getting a dog and doing a load of cool things with that. So of course that helps, but like personally for me in my own battle against mental health, being completely true and trying not to allow myself to be drawn in to even conversations that I don't even really want to be part of. Now, you're a complete liar if you don't bitch about somebody at one point in your life. I'm no different to that. But one thing that I have found myself is when other people are doing it, and I don't feel that their opinion quite aligns with mine. It's not that you're correct on it. Maybe I should, but again, it's just my opinion. Is that I just don't input, and I prefer that about myself. It's little things like that, and just calming my brain down and calming my thoughts down. And I tell you what did help that was the remedial hypnosis with Sarah Wellband, who, again, I'll reiterate, if you have not went and gone check her out our 2 episodes together, go check them out, because I really do think it could help you. And, that's helped me, because in a way, like I say, I'd kind of gotten lost earlier in the year. When I look at my mental health as a whole, over like, pardon me, the last 7 or 8 years, I can pick out like really good moments and really horrible moments. And I can go back to kind of pre-COVID times and be pretty satisfied with who I was and what I was doing. Okay, it's weird. It's weird. It's like I don't know if anybody else maybe has it with their own mental health. When you see a photo of yourself from years ago, and you don't, yes, you recognize the memory in that, but you pick out single-handedly probably how you felt at that time. That's something that I find myself doing a lot. And I can be quite honest, and like I can pick up memories from like, yeah, okay, had really bad anxiety, but I had nothing like the depression that I have now, or suffer with now, I should say. And that was completely different. So I can look at things and go, God, yeah, like that was scary, like that was horrendous. It ain't how I feel now. Like I go back to that emptiness void. Sometimes that's the one that we want to stay away from. That's the horrible shadow that lurks in the corner of the room, so to speak, metaphorically, of course, speaking. So, yeah, this podcast has completely changed my life, and it's got me speaking to people that I never, ever, ever thought in a million, gazillion, trillion years that I'd ever have the pleasure of speaking with as well. And the first ones, when I go back to like the one with Alan, that was amazing because not only did it give me amazing plays, thanks, Alan, it was my first introduction to having a guest, and it was a nice soft entrance for that. Like anybody knows, I've known Alan for a good couple of years, and he's always been there, and he's always helped me out through some tough times. And it was really cool to start the podcast in that sort of fashion, because it was less nervous. It was just like a conversation that I think that we could have any day of the week, and that's what made it unique. And that kind of uniqueness was what I wanted the Borderline podcast to be, and still is that kind of, I don't want to say sloppy editing. It is sloppy editing, but that natural vibe that I have when we do speak, and to think that it took me until December to get my third or fourth guest. I think it was the very start of December was my third guest, and so yeah, a lot of them early podcasts were solo podcasts. So yeah, it's obviously been completely different for this year, especially. It's been 90% guests, which has been amazing. I mean, did I ever think that my first guest online was a neuroscientist who was, he was amazing, so intelligent, and just so laid back as well. So cool to talk to. And then we spoke to football referees who were dealing with referees, obviously with mental health, and giving them a nice mental health support base to work with. Obviously, Sarah, that was a life-changing, we may as well say, kind of conversation that happened. And then, we went from there. And like I said, the hypnosis is completely, is just helped me so much recognize the pattern of the behavior of my own brain, and just being able to be half a step ahead of it, and that half step is massive. So yeah, them ones especially, and some of the ones that you guys haven't seen as well. Obviously, Chris Kozakos was just released last week. I've also got Leanne Tran, who I was really, really disappointed with myself with that episode. You will know that I'm still going to release it anyway, but that is the one that's been a bit too out my depth, and you will pick that up, absolutely no doubt. What I mean by that was we were dealing with it's a parent-child psychologist. I don't have kids, so it was very hard for me to keep that natural conveyance questions kind of going, I guess is what I'm trying to say there. It felt like I was asking the same sort of question time after time, or I was trying to ask the same one slightly differently to make it sound like a different. Anyway, it's not the best episode. One of the reasons why I've held off with that one. David Nordell as well. That was one of the best conversations that I've had on here. That guy was incredibly inspirational. Army medic, veteran, over 25 years served. Complex PTSD, helps out veterans and recovery programs and equine and stuff now. And he was just a really cool dude. But I had terrible connections, or one of us did, during that interview. So basically, what I've got is I've got like fragments of it. I've got all the audio, but the audio's not the best. So the video wise, I've got like little blotches of videos and blank screens, and it's just a complete and utter mess. Because I obviously ran the AI generator over it lazily, like I do before anything, because AI is incredibly smart. It's far smarter than I'll ever be, I think. And yeah, it went to town on that, and it just obviously tried to tidy it up the best it could, but AI ain't that smart. It couldn't defunk that one. So yeah, there's pardon me, there's a couple of episodes that you still haven't heard as well. So, but speaking of guests as well, coming up on the Borderline podcast, like I've said as well from the start, is that I've wanted to. Mental health will always be the forefront subject. That's always going to be why we're here. We're here to talk about mental health. But like I've said, this is just personally me speaking. I don't know about you guys that listen to your podcasts. When I'm in a really, I'm not saying shit state of mind, but if I'm just not there, if I'm not present, let's just call it like that. I don't mind listening to a podcast, and what I like listening to is just something bizarre, out there, unconventional, maybe not thought of that before, and so there's going to be some of that coming up in the Borderline podcast as well. Um, if you know me, you'll know that I'm all about my conspiracies as well. Not also conspiracies, but also of world beliefs, a little bit of spirituality in there as well. So later on this month, we've got Simon Dwan coming on. I had to cancel last minute on him last time thanks to the bloody P season. So he's luckily coming back on. We're going to talk about simulation theory, the paranormal, parapsychology, stuff like that. So that's going to be really, 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 really cool. Got a ton of other guests coming on too. Kevin Palmieri, he was obviously due to be on earlier in the year. He's coming back on too. And obviously I'm going to be trying to get some local guys and girls on here, however you identify, sorry. And, we will hopefully converse. And sorry, I totally lost my chain of thought with that. I need to get better at that. And yeah, so I want to get back to some local podcasts and speaking to some local guests too, because it's really important, like I said, to get kind of back into this little region and this little pocket and start helping out in ways that I can help out. And more importantly, I don't know where the Borderline podcast will go next. It's been a crazy year. I didn't expect it to be here right now. So, God only knows that one. I wasn't too sure if I was actually hitting any of them or I still had any of them left. But there's one that hit me right there when I was going past it, and that's what's been the hardest thing about the podcast. And that is an easy one to answer and a very difficult one to answer at first. That does not make any sense. I know I've just done that once again, but here we go. So the hardest thing, this is just not going to make sense. Oh, how I'm going to answer this. The hardest thing about the podcast is not knowing if it's helping at the expense of what you're putting out. I then get the validation of that with what I spoke about earlier with, somebody will come up to you and say, oh, yeah, listen to this and this was good. And you'll see that. And you'll see that in statistics. I don't like looking at the podcast stats too much anymore. I used to be obsessed with it when I first started, but now I rarely check it. Partly because they all got completely jammed when I went across the Podbean from Spotify. They were just all over the place. So now I have to add them up and I just can't be bothered. So I just kind of let that go with the flow. So that's kind of like the hardest thing. The hardest thing is when you do stuff. And also when I get really excited about a direction that I want to go, or in fact, this is the honest podcast. So let's just be entirely honest with this answer. And it intertwines with mental health as well, because anybody that knows me will know that I can be quite eccentric with my moods, and that's a telltale sign of people with poor mental health sometimes as well, so their moods can be all over the place. So yeah, when I'm up in these kind of high moods, I'll get these not urges, but they are urges, I guess, to be I'm going to go do this, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to go do this, and sometimes I'll post about it. And when I don't do that, I let my it's so hard to explain that feeling that it does to me. It's just like somebody could punch me really hard in the stomach, I guess. And that consumes me too much sometimes, and I've been a lot better of it of late. But even trying to do this episode has been distinctively harder than what it was when I first started doing this. Now that's quite weird because it's been a year, but like I say, it's not done the best of solo podcasts this year, so here we are. And I know I'm not letting anybody down with that because, like I say, you get in the validation, but it sometimes feel that I have to as well. I know I shouldn't have to. I guess you guys maybe know what I mean by that. And yeah, that's the hardest part is my own disappointment in myself sometimes because I've realized again, with being completely honest with myself and meditation, that my biggest fear is failure. It is like that is it. It's I want this to work and I want this to help people because when you're in that deep state of relaxation, and I highly hope you do some breathing work on yourself. Highly recommend it. Is what I've been trying to say. I could not think of that word. And you get into that state, and like I said earlier, when you can answer those questions, failure is something that came up to me, and it's something that hit me straight away. When I get that feeling, I know that my brain's on it, and I know that I'm connected. And yeah, since then, what I've done is I've kind of put a safety net up, I guess, in regards to the podcast, and maybe that's why as well I wasn't doing it during the peak season because I knew that that may have been the time that it could have failed because if I'd pushed it like I sometimes have in the past and burnt myself out again. I know how shit my moods get this time of year anyway, and I don't know how I would have dealt with that, and I can't deal with the thought of failing out of this right now. So that is the true, honest reflection of how I feel about it, and that is the hardest part of it to deal with, is what I mean. But then you get people saying, "Oh, it's good." So we're all good, but yeah, it's learning that and just what it's like. It could be anything like that. You go to the gym and you get bigger. You don't see yourself getting bigger. Others do sometimes, and then they'll say it, and you're like, "Oh wow, okay, it's working." That's the same thing. Or you're losing weight, and you can't quite see. Is the weight coming off? I've always looked like this, and then someone says, "Oh my god, you lost weight." Oh, thanks. That's what I've been trying to do. It's exactly the same with this gig. What a way to describe it. Twice. So yeah, that was actually a pretty cool point to cover. And like I said, the best thing is when people say that it's working and people talk to you about it. And I think quite early on as well, one of the quite moving things was when you're hearing that it was helping people. Like, oh, I've spoken to, like the kind of hearsay thing of, oh, I've spoken to them and they listen and they said it really helps you. It really helps them, and that's amazing because that is what I want, because I know how hard, and I'll say it again, I know how hard this can get sometimes. I'm a hell of a lot better. I am so much better than what I've been. Yes, I've lost a ton of weight. Yes, I've not been eating right. Okay, I'm going to get on that. But again, it's with the shifts that I do. Mentally, I'm very, very, very happy. And I'm not just saying that. It genuinely feels that this is moving. And with it, I want to, keep the positive vibe going. I just want to, just keep channeling it going. And hopefully maybe the positive spin on mental health will help other people get onto the subject of mental health as well. So this is the really exciting time for the Borderline podcast, because last year we were going in on the dive on this is how shit my life has been, and we've been trying to get back up onto that surface. So we're treading the water, and we've been there numerous times throughout the year, but they've been incredibly limited periods of time. Whereas now, even with the shitness of what's just gone on with the P season, I feel really fucking good, and I feel really quite positive about going forward. So that is what the Borderline podcast has done for me, and I genuinely hope it can possibly do it for you as well. And that's why I'm here, and that's why we're going to keep on doing it. So until next year, this has been Andrew Willox. Good night.